Welcome to Happy Hour Holidaze with your host, Manny Fresh, and your co-host standing in the ring, 6'2" with the hat, Sean Fabrizi, drinking the White Claw with the American flag koozie. It never fails. And then we got the Rainmaker himself, Harvey Specter. Just fucking kidding, without all the corruptions, but it's the only guy I know that has a real lawyer name, Steve Fantetti. How we doing, Steve?
Fantetti.
Doing great. Appreciate you.
I said Fantetti, right?
Close enough.
That was close enough.
You're only one drink in, so it's as good as you could have done otherwise.
Once we see multiple drinks, then it starts to become a little bit of gibberish. But overall, man, we're happy to have you, Steve. I know we've been trying to get you on the podcast. I mean, you're a busy guy, but how's everything going, man?
It's great. I appreciate you guys having me. The studio's unreal, first of all.
Thanks.
And it's a pleasure to be here and always make time for you guys.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I wish we could smoke cigars because I know my boy Steve loves smoking cigars. One day we might have a pod studio where we could, or a podcast studio where we can smoke cigars. But as of right now, this is a start. And, you know, Steve specializes in all kinds of corporate, being a corporate attorney. He's really good with helping small business, develop a side where they can protect themselves. What do you see, Steve, are the most important issues when it comes to small businesses?
Well, the first thing is I want to make sure Sean knows we're not billing for this podcast.
I know he asked me that this morning. He's like, is Steve going to bill us for the podcast?
I literally did ask him that. I was like, yo, dog.
I was like, no,
it's free. It's free for you guys forever. How many podcasts you want? So that's an important first question. No, they don't ask that. I would say the biggest thing, it's funny because I had 2 calls on this today already. And just in the morning, new clients that need either they're in one of 2 buckets, which is the great thing to know is one is they moved too fast and didn't get a lawyer, or they're actually doing it right where they're taking their time and they're getting a lawyer to help them kind of walk through what they need to know. So that's kind of the 2 buckets you'll fall in when you hear from a client. And the ones that generally have already started doing things without a lawyer, we generally have to reverse more than 80% of what they've done. So you have to work backwards, which I feel bad because whatever time and money they spent, we have to go back. They have to spend more money and use more time to fix it because it most likely is not done right. And there's things that they missed. So for them that are in that bucket, and we'll get into details, that's kind of where they'll fall. But the new clients, a lot of them, they're just really unclear on everything. They either don't have enough expertise and understanding, not just legal issues, but also just business in general, like how to structure, what structure to use. They don't understand, what each of their rights are in terms of the ownership of what they're going to have in the company. They're going to have people that want to have sweat equity. And they're going to say, look, I'm not giving capital to start the company off. I'm just going to do all my efforts and my time have a value. And then you argue over how do you value that? And then people will get into situations about, what happens if I die? Or what happens if I become disabled or inability to operate? What happens to my ownership? Do I still get paid? Those types of things. So those come up. And then what if we want to get bought or sold? How do we get into an acquisition situation? What kind of voting rights are we going to have? What if we bring new members in and we're going to have to dilute ourselves, which means people lose a percentage of ownership to make room for new investors, right? It's in the Facebook movie. It's a great example. Ever seen Social Network?
That was one of my favorites.
That happened in real life. That's what happened. They diluted that guy down to like 0.03% when he had 35% of Facebook, which is billions of dollars.
He got paid out though, didn't he?
Well, he did because he brought a lawsuit that there was, issues with the paperwork, fraud, and a bunch of other things. But he should have got a lawyer to look at his paperwork, in my opinion.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know the whole story. I just saw what happened in the movie. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of, I can get a detail on any of those items. I wanted to give you a list, but a lot of those things generally come up.
Yeah, because I think, Steve, one of the biggest things for new business, small business owners is they're like, should I be an LLC or should I go to be a corporation? What do you usually tell people? Does it depend on what they're doing, or how do you choose what structure?
Fantastic question, because I teach corporate law at Western Michigan's satellite campus in Tampa, and that's the class I teach is about business entities, how to form them, strategies behind picking the right one, the paperwork to file to get them started, what the documents need to look like between the members or the shareholders, depending on what you have. And to answer your question directly, I think it's a pretty simple question, it's just in concept, which is, look, if you're trying to start a business where it's just a couple of you and there's no real complex issues behind what we need to do from a strategy purpose, we just need to operate, we need to start gaining revenue, I would say LLC is your safe bet. Because you have that liability shield of protection that protects you personally from anything that goes on with the business, assuming you do everything right. Long story short is people ask me all the time, well, why do people start businesses? I say it's for 2 reasons: tax advantages and to protect your personal net worth from being subject to a lawsuit if the business is sued, right? Yeah. The LLC gives you a layer of protection, says if you have claims against the business, and let's say we have $100,000 in the business bank account, and you sue, all you're going to get is $100,000 if you win. So if you have a $500,000 judgment, where are you going to get the other $400,000? You won't get it because the shield stops you from coming to the owners who might have it, from selling their house, selling their car, attaching liens on their property, or garnishing their wages. It stops at the entity door. If you do things wrong, like commingle funds, use the business bank account for personal reasons, don't keep track of company records, then when you're in court and a claim comes, it looks like, the law says, you didn't act like a company. Why should we treat you like one? The veil goes away and you can go start suing people.
So there's also a better way of doing it, right? Because I remember you and I spoke about this, irrevocable trust, right?
Yes.
So if you own an LLC as an irrevocable trust and you are the trustee, now you have two layers of what you call a corporate veil, where the individual owns nothing.
Correct.
Which means that if the individual is sued, whoever is doing the suing gets nothing whatsoever, because all the individual is a trustee of that trust, who then the trust also owns that LLC, correct?
Right. The only difference I would say in your scenario would be that if it's an irrevocable trust, that means that you can't be the trustee of your own trust.
Oh, really?
It's irrevocable, you appoint somebody else, which is what you want. That gives you the better protection. If it's if it is revocable, that means you can modify it, right? Revoke. You can revoke who the trustee is. You can change it. Generally, those revocable trusts you appoint yourself because you want to be in control to make sure. You still have the trust's protection, but when you can direct what happens with the assets in a revocable trust, there's case law that you can be brought into the claim. Doesn't mean you'll be sued individually, but you'll be involved and you'll have to obviously answer some questions to show that there's a justification as to why you shouldn't be in the lawsuit. And that can happen. I've been in those cases. But if it's irrevocable, it means you have no part of it. The trustee only acts in accordance with the trust agreement. The trust agreement says we don't pay out creditors, we don't do this and that. Then say, too bad, you got to listen to the trustee, don't come after me. The trust is who you're suing, which is the owner. It's not me, I'm not the named owner. And that's how you avoid the liability.
So then an irrevocable trust, let's say I establish an irrevocable trust, right. I cannot be the trustee.
Correct.
Could my wife be the trustee on it?
Possibly.
Okay, so that is actually
the only problem is if you own assets jointly and tenants by the entirety,
then she can't do it.
Then you're technically her. You guys are one under the law.
Well, then who would you appoint? I mean,
there's different. You can appoint trusted family members if you have those. You can appoint.
I don't have those.
You can appoint. You can appoint. I don't think you do either. You can appoint. There's actual company like the trustee over the trust that my wife and I have. I don't mind saying this. I won't say who it is, but there's companies. You can hire a company. You can hire a bank. They will be your trustee. And they're actually very good. I chose that over individuals. They will actually invest parts of your trust because they're good at it. It's what they do. They invest your money because whether they're banks or finance companies or trustee companies, they are responsible for taking care of every single component of your trust when their job gets activated, which means if it's upon your death or something happens or they take over your children's rights, whatever it is, they will make sure that whatever the document says, they will interpret it the way it's exactly supposed to be said and they will carry out the duties you say. And that way, you're isolated from it, and they're the ones that handle it all. So if someone says, look, the trust isn't paying me X and Y and Z, you say, don't bother me. I'm not the trustee. I'm a beneficiary, maybe. I might get paid out from the trust, but I'm not. Everything's in the trust, and the trustee's going to do what the trustee's told in the trust agreement. That's why a trust agreement is so important, because then that will dictate what happens. If the trustee's doing nothing, then you tell people, take it up with the trustee, and that's a tough legal claim to bring. So then
if you're a beneficiary of this irrevocable trust that you hire this company to manage your trust or be the trustee in that vocabulary there, you come up with a trustee agreement prior to that. So then you say, hey, listen, this trust is going to pay me X amount of dollars per week, per day, per month.
It's like an annuity if you want to call it that. Or it could maybe be once in your lifetime.
Can it be modified? Can that contract be modified, that trustee contract?
It's irrevocable. So you can't revoke who the trustee is, but you can modify it if you have terms already in there that are built out for amendments, modifications, then they can be done. If it's a revocable, you can modify it every hour if you wanted to. But if it's irrevocable, it means you can't revoke who the trustee is, right? Unless you have provisions where like they're self-dealing or stealing or they were grossly negligent. Then there's reasons where you can remove the trustee. And there's terms in there about removal. But you can't revoke where you have the assets going. That's the thing. So you can't change that. So if you say my dad gets $1 million upon, he turns 75 to help him if his wife is no longer alive or whatever, your mother's no longer around and he needs that money. Well, you can't change it. Once that gift is granted, unless there's conditions in the trust that say that he can't do it or he can't get those for certain reasons, like if he remarries or if the trustee doesn't want to give it out because he thinks there's a reason where the father could use it on drugs. Like there's clauses like that. Otherwise, that money's going there and you can't stop it.
So then now I have a pretty distinctive question here.
Sure.
Let's say in that trustee contract, in the irrevocable trust, there's a line that says it could be revoked at any point in time.
It wouldn't be an irrevocable trust.
But I mean, it still is, right? And then all you have is a line that says, yo, I can modify this whenever I want.
Then it wouldn't be an irrevocable trust. Yeah, so the irrevocable trust can't have revocable lange.
Oh, okay.
There you go. That's what I'm going to tell you. Otherwise, the interpretation in court would be that it's a revocable trust, Your Honor, just improperly drafted or set up.
Is there a difference in terms of tax benefits between irrevocable and revocable trusts?
So there can be. That's not a yes or no answer quickly for two reasons. One, I'm not a tax expert. Don't want to hold myself out as one. But the second reason, which is more specifically, is it's all going to be based on what's in the trust. What are the trust corpus, which means all the assets that are in it, what it has. Because you might have property you've been holding for a certain amount of years and there's capital gains. So that'll tell you that maybe you're going to be taxed at a certain way. Or you might have stock, right? And you might have been holding that for a certain period of time. Or you might have certain property where if you get it from the trust and you sell it for the same type of property, it's called a 1031 exchange, like-kind property for like-kind property. Yeah. So that might be a different, so that's what I'm saying. I would need way more facts and details to give you specifics. But of course, there can be and there are tax advantages. I just can't get into all of them or tell you exactly what they were. And I would probably want facts to be able to give you more specifics. But just to make sure.
This guy's a lawyer, guys.
But just to bring it back full circle, I want to make sure I answer Mr. Manny Fresh's question. I only answered it in part. The first part was about how do you decide between LLC and corporation.
Correct.
I told you LLC is kind of really basic, mom and pop, simple businesses. Also, if you don't need to scale it too much with investment reasons, I say use the LLC. Because the corporation, to answer your question, the second part is I tell clients, use a corporation if you're really trying to need capital. Because corporations present stock structures that help you be able to maintain your ability to vote, maintain your ability to have a board seat, which means that you're the one who's making a lot of the decisions for the oversight operations. And then you can grant shares and ownership where people can't vote. Like Class A common stock is the voting stock. Class B preferred shares. Preferred stock means you have no voting rights. It just means you get paid first on dividends. You get liquidation preference. If the company gets sold, you get paid first. Or if the company folds, you get your money back first. These types of things. So that's a beneficial kind of stock that investor says, if I'm going to invest in your company, if I'm going to get these benefits, even though I can't vote, I want it. A lot of times, though, investors will say, well, if I can't vote, I at least want to be on the board. I want a board seat about direction of the company, even though I can't vote every day in the ordinary course. Yeah, we can get into that if you want to. So I just want to make sure I answered your question. It just really depends where you see your business going. Companies that have nothing and they need to grow and they need a lot of investment capital, I say use a corporation because you can structure different classes of shares. There's tax issues that are a little bit different with that because you can't be taxed as an S corp when you have multiple classes of stock. So you have to be comfortable with that. But I mean, most corporations default to a C Corp's taxation status, which just means you're going to be taxed twice on corporate income and then taxed again when you pay yourself dividends.
Yeah. And another thing, Steve, I know when it comes to the LLC, you've suggested if you get big enough to use holding companies, right? Holding companies.
That's a big advantage to have LLCs.
To sell up a corporate veil because, I mean, there's a lot of business owners that do commingle funds. Let's just say it out there. If you start a new business, you're unaware, but really you can't commingle funds. It's going to...
You're sharing money between companies. You don't have a justified reason or a contract.
I mean, that's another way to protect yourself when you do have an LLC. What do you tell most of the small businesses when they get to a certain point? Do you set up one of those, basically I like to call it the nice web that kind of...
Great way to say it. Yeah, no, absolutely. Because one of the problems is, and the way I teach this is, a lot of times if you start an LLC, and that's great because you understand you want protection from yourself and what's going on with the entity. But a lot of times I tell my clients, look, you have to be aware of two things. One is, do you think you're going to do everything right? Because if you don't, you want to have a safe, way to protect yourself. And then two is, everybody assumes that you're going to scale. You're going to grow in some way. And so the problem that comes with LLCs too often with small businesses that I see is they're doing way too much in one company. The classic one is the computer company. A computer company says, look, we are a repair company. All we do is repair computers. Great. Over time now, they start selling computer equipment. Then they start saying, look, we're going to create our own software. that will help you be able to fix your computer and interface with us and do all these other things. Well, now you're not a computer company anymore that just fixes computers. You're now a software company. You're now a hardware selling company. Well, if a claim comes from somebody against your software, or a claim comes against someone from the hardware you're selling, or a claim comes against your company for fixing the computers, you've now opened yourself up to all these different risk liabilities that people can sue you for. But if you isolated each one of those activities in their own LLC, have them owned by a holding company, which means the company's the owner. So you're up here in the parent company, you create your own company where you own it. Create a buffer where you have an LLC holding company. It's called a holding company because it holds and owns the ownership of the different operations going on. Put each one of those things, the fixing of the computers, the hardware company and the software company, right, into their own LLCs, and they're each making their own money. They're each separate. So a claim against one of those doesn't touch what's going on. The other two can operate. You can't touch their money because you can say, look, they're separate companies. The problem companies have is they don't keep their records proper. They don't share, or they're sharing money between them. They don't have a proper purpose, or they don't have separate bank accounts. Then you run into what's called a common enterprise theory. I've made that argument where I say, look, you look like a common enterprise. This is all one enterprise. You're trying to act like you're different companies, but you're not. So if you want to look like different companies, you better be it and obviously produce that you're looking like a different company with all the records and the way you operate. Otherwise, I'll make that claim and make you look like one and come after everything.
And when we get back, Steve's gonna tell us what is the best way where to put your tangible assets. Do you want to put them all in the same LLC, or do you want to create something that's going to make it better for you in protection? When we get back, we'll see what he says. And we're back at Happy Hour Holidaze with the Rainmaker himself, Steve Fantetti, the only guy with the actual lawyer's name. This guy, if I saw him on a piece of paper, I'd be like, saw 20 names, I'd be like, this guy's an attorney.
Didn't you see him on Fantetti Lit Inspector?
Actually, I want to touch base on that in a little bit.
We got to talk about that.
But Steve, I know you work with a lot of NFL players, and I know they have a ton of assets. How do you tell these guys how to, put these assets in either LLCs, corporations, or what do you tell them for them to protect their assets? Because they have a lot of exposure. They're high-end names. People always want to go after people with money.
Sexual assault.
Yeah, stuff like that.
No, I'm dead. What was it? Deshaun Watson?
Was that Elon Musk? Was that sexual assaults? I think it was him, dude. Hey, way off, dude.
That was good. Whoa. So, great question, because where you ended the last segment, that literally is a great segue into this, because it's about asset protection. And that's literally the NFL players that I work with. That's generally what they need, because the hardest thing to acquire assets is you need capital, right? And that's something that they generally don't have a deficiency in. So when they come to me, generally, I look at two things. One is I try to empower them, which is the difficult part. I try to get them to understand what I'm doing and why we're doing it and why it's important. Like, what's an LLC? Why do you need it? A lot of times they don't know this. They're not getting this. I don't think they're getting it from the NFL, and I don't think they're getting it from any other source. I know a couple of agents, and I know one of them particularly who I was just with in Minnesota actually this past weekend, who actually cares and is trying. He actually put on an empowerment seminar. That's why I went there. And it's a lot of what I'm doing with my business in terms of working with athletes, is I'm trying to just empower them and say, look, if I'm going to get to a point where if I'm going to represent them, I want them to be playing football, which is only a short part of their life. Whatever they do in business off the field is actually going to be longer than their playing career, their NFL life. Yeah. And so I say to them, you need to make sure you have a plan while you're playing as to what you're doing when you're done, and start working on it now. It's going to be too late to do it when you get out. Too late's maybe the wrong term. It's going to be more difficult, I should say. Yeah. You can do anything anytime in your life. I never want to put limitations on people. And so when I work with them and they come to me and they say, look, this is what I have, it falls into the bucket I said in last segment. Someone who's done all these things, and we got to reverse it all. So a lot of times I have players that all of them want to be moguls and they buy a lot of real estate. I have worked with players where all their real estate's in their personal name. No LLCs at all. So asset protection wise, we know that if there's a claim against, let's say, one property they're renting out, slip and fall, whatever, and there's a claim, and let's say the house is $300,000, but they lost the lawsuit, and it's $1 million, they can now force them to sell all the other company or houses, properties, to make up for the deficiency in that judgment, and then they lose everything.
You also see that on insurance, I guess, as far as the exposure, because you have to select the right insurance, especially if you're an LLC and you have property and they're probably just doing basic homeowner insurance.
Well, right, because you want to make sure your homeowner insurance policy doesn't have exclusions.
Yeah.
If you did something wrong or didn't maintain something or get it checked or there was a leak, you let it go too long. I mean, my wife's an insurance lawyer, property insurance lawyer. She tells me this is the way the insurance companies can avoid payouts because the homeowner was too negligent in doing things, and it happens a lot. So asset protection wise, we make sure they isolate their assets into different entities. We make sure that with the way they scale, they're not doing too much like the computer example, too much out of one company. We can break those off. Make sure there's a justification, I like to say, where, like your question said, what's more advantageous or beneficial to people if they're going to have multiple LLCs and assets is try to see if you can find an interplay, which means if you can create a company or you already have one and assets that can work together, if you can charge one company for utilization of services or something of the other company, you're kind of double dipping. So let's say, for instance, you have a commercial property that you can lease out 6 or 7 different places in it, right, to different businesses. Well, you can put one of your businesses in there. But if you own the land your own business is operating and you're paying rent to yourself and you're taking capital that company is making in from whatever product or service it's selling, and it's using that money to then pay you rent. So you're double dipping off collecting the rent from everybody else, collecting rent from yourself, and you own the commercial property building.
Tax liability also, right?
Well, not a liability necessarily, tax advantages.
Tax advantages.
Correct. Yeah.
So what would you say to people that own multiple real estate properties, whether it be commercial or residential? Would you say that each single property needs its own LLC?
Yes, 100%.
Oh, really?
Absolutely.
Really?
Well, yeah, think about it. If you
own 100 homes, you need 100 LLCs.
That would be my recommendation. I'm not going to say
Is there a reason for that?
Yes. Let's say you own 2 of them in the same LLC. I think I just said this example. Let's say you own 2 commercial buildings in the same one. Well, if there's a lawsuit against the one commercial building for whatever the reason is, and let's say you lose, and that commercial building's worth $500,000, but you lose for $1 million judgment, where are they going to get the other $500,000?
From the other property.
They're going to say, oh, this other property's in there. It's not a separate one. Sell that too. Now you just lost it. If it was in a separate company, my argument defending you would say, you can't get that property. It's an entirely different company. Lawsuits against this company. They try to bring a claim against the other company. They can't. It has no standing because it's a completely different company, different purpose, had no relation to this lawsuit. They lose. They're only going to get whatever they got. The court says they get.
So let's say
you can lose properties that fast by not isolating them, and I've seen it.
So let's say they pierce that first LLC, right?
Sure.
And then the holding company right there owns the rest of them.
Stops. Yep.
Owns the rest of them, and somehow you messed up on maybe your meeting minutes or whatever the contract may be.
Could be one of the reasons.
And then can they attack your other LLCs in order to?
If they can pierce that veil, but it's tough if they can. They'd have to be able to pierce it. They have to show that.
How would you do it? How would you pierce that veil?
Give me a scenario and I'll tell you.
Okay, let's say Joe Schmo. Let's say Joe Schmo is
Joe Schmo's name Manny? No,
guys, I have filed my taxes correctly and I have done
allegedly.
Let's say
Joe Schmo.
Tony Galacci.
There you go.
Tony
like
Galacci. You know that's Italian, right? Tony Galacci owns four properties. All right. And what Galacci did was he put all 4 properties into separate LLCs, and then he made a holding company.
Owns them all. Yep.
But he operated his bank accounts through just one bank account.
So he had LLCs that only had one bank account. They used the holding company.
No. So the holding company's bank account, and he didn't open bank accounts for the LLC. So how would you attack
that? Scenario, because that's a common one.
Yeah. So how would you?
That's commingling, right? I mean, that's a pretty.
There's no question, because if you're a company, you have to have one of the items you have to have is your own bank account. It has to have its own tax ID number. So therefore, it has to have its own bank account.
Yeah.
So the question is, then it looks like you're operating a common enterprise.
So
if I was on the plaintiff side, I would argue the common enterprise theory. If I was the defendant side, I would settle. But I mean, it would be tough. I would try to make an argument if there was a way I could prove a management, which means, look, it's a management company, the holding company. We're managing the funds for their entities. So they are separate companies.
You set them up that way.
Would I win? I don't know. If you asked me how I would defend it, I'd have to be creative.
No, how you would pierce it is what I asked.
Well, that's different. So now I'm representing the plaintiff now. So
that one's pretty easy, right? Common enterprise.
I just gave you common enterprise theory. You failed to maintain the formalities that the law requires, which are separate operating accounts for the business.
Is that what common enterprise definition is then?
Common enterprise means the opposite. So complying with the law means you set the company up the way the law requires. Separate tax ID number, separate name, separate documents, separate bank account, separate transactions that relate only to that entity.
And contracts between all
Separately,
LLCs,
correct, separately. Common enterprise means you haven't done any one or two or more of those things, and it has common ownership, and you can't prove separation. Separation means you do all these things separately for each company. If they're getting the same service or something from the same related company, and there's no contract to justify it, like a management agreement or a consulting agreement or something, then it looks like it's just a common enterprise, which means everything really is one company because there's one bank account. Then I say that's a common enterprise theory claim. I'd probably win. And I'd probably be able to get all the properties I need to justify the judgment that the court awarded me to win that case.
Damn, this guy's a savage.
That's what I would do.
Savage.
I mean, but overall, I mean, that's what's the most common, I guess the most common thing you see with piercing the corporate veil. Is that the most common one? Is commingling funds?
That's one of the most common ones. It's a great question, by the way, because when this is taught in law school, I'll tell you what they tell you. It's a Delaware case that controls the precedent that most states followed. And first of all, let you know, it's very hard to pierce the veil.
Really?
I mean, you gotta be pretty reckless. You do. Because think about it. The way the legislature legislated the enactment of entity protections and the statutes, they want to make sure people are motivated to want to create companies. They want you to. If you could lose the protection so quickly, no one would really care about making companies anymore. So they want you to do it. So to lose that protection, you really got to do a lot of these things wrong. Okay. And then secondary to that, the Delaware case that I told you about, I didn't say the name and I'll stay away from getting too boring on it. But long story short, Florida is what really matters. We're in Florida, we're talking about Florida law. They follow kind of the same rule, is that there isn't one specific instance in and of itself that will cause the court to say pierce the veil. They're going to look at the totality of the circumstances, and they're going to do basically it's like a means test, which is, look, we know the case says there's 15 things a court could consider. They're going to say, how many of them did you do? How many of these did you hit that showed you were that reckless? I've seen cases where it's one thing, but the one thing was done so bad that justified piercing the veil. Wow. Then I've seen cases where they did 13 out of the 15 and said, yep, that's enough. They clearly didn't do anything. Right. So no, my point of that is not one in and of itself. If there's enough bad things, even if they're not done very badly, but enough bad things, the court might say, yeah, it's worth it. If it's one thing and it's not done that bad, even though you're on the list, the court might say, well, that's not enough to justify it. They just made a little minor error, but it doesn't mean they should lose the protection. Yeah. Or that one thing's done so egregiously, they say we have to pierce it. Which means you literally took all this cash and went to the Louis store and all we did was buy Louis bags. You didn't do anything with this capital. You didn't reinvest the capital in business.
I thought it was Gucci.
You didn't pay taxes. Gucci for me, I'm a Gucci guy. I know you guys are Louis guys. But that's what I mean. So the court, it's always on a case-by-case basis. It's never the same. So I want to make sure you knew that. I couldn't give you and say, look, if you do X, then every time you'll get pierced. The answer was no. The court's going to say, we want to treat every case differently, and they should be doing that on purpose. Because like they tell you in law school, no case is the same. Every set of facts might look like other cases, and that helps you analyze case precedent to choose how to analyze the facts, how to make arguments. But little small tweaks in the facts can help you make different arguments, or you might fall under a different law now that you're subject to, which could help or hurt your client. So it all depends in terms of piercing the veil.
So Steve, I know you say like when you get a new client that maybe has had a business, maybe they didn't have the funds to be able to hire, so what do you tell those people that
or give ownership?
Yeah. That, oh, really? Oh, okay. That's
Depends.
that's
well, I was wondering what you're getting to.
Well, because what I was getting to is like, let's say, somebody really wants to do it legitimately, but they just don't have the funds because, hiring an attorney can be expensive. And it could be. It could be.
I don't want Sean to tell you. Sean hates spending money on lawyers.
But I just want to.
I hate spending money, period.
But I want you to tell the audience, like, what should you do? If you want to start a business, you want to do it legitimately and you want to do it the right way so that you don't have to go back and do 80% of the work all over again, what can you do?
Somebiz.org. Great question. So, look, to avoid biased opinions, I always say you should get a lawyer because I would tell you the analogy is probably a terrible one, an outplayed one, but it's the right one, which is if you're not feeling well, are you going to treat yourself or are you going to go to a doctor? Probably?
This guy does.
Right.
He WebMDs himself.
So regular people should go to doctors. Right? This guy's an anomaly there. So, but my point is you're going to go to the source of the information you want, right? If you try to make it up, that's when you're going to probably make errors or miss something. For all you know, you don't go to a doctor, you're going to miss a scan you should have had and then it's over. It's chapter 11 time. So my point is the law, it's the same way. So I would say, go to a lawyer. Find one that'll give you a free consultation. Find one that'll give you advice. I give free consultations all the time. Believe it or not, Sean. I do. So I will gladly do it. I will gladly do that. I don't bill for everything either, as you know. Something. So, but my point to that is to really bring it back is I would highly recommend you do it because you need to go to the source. And what you need to do is when any lawyer should tell you from a business lawyer should tell you from that side is say, look, tell me about your business. Let's look at what the risks are that you're facing in the interim. Because if you're going to operate now, maybe you need to, but how many risks are you facing? If you're facing too many from a risk analysis standpoint, then we need to put this off. You can operate in the interim. Don't do X, Y, and Z. Just do A, B, and C for now. When you're ready for X, Y, and Z, then you come see me, and then we'll talk about how to integrate the next steps to avoid the risks. So that's what I would tell them. But you have to analyze that and really know where you're at. Because if you start too soon, those risks might come sooner than you think, and you're going to miss them, and you won't have what you need in place to protect you.
So I'm really curious. You said something. I think it was maybe like 2 minutes ago about, hey, if you can't afford a lawyer, well, you can give up equity in your business. Have you actually been presented that offer, or have you presented that offer? And how many businesses do you own?
So how many businesses do I own? A lot.
Yeah. Because of that scenario.
So I stay away from that. I've only got one where I've taken equity in the company in return for legal services that I'm still involved in. There was a couple I've exited them. They were good exits for the most part.
They bought you out, or?
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
The biggest issue you have to face as a lawyer, though, is you have to be aware of conflict of interest. That's why I don't do it a lot or at all, really, if I can avoid it. Because what happens is, if you're going to be counsel, remember, the company is your client, not the people. And so you're going to be making decisions on the best interest of the company, not the individuals in it, and they might not be happy with it. Then they're going to say, well, you're making your decision because it's going to enrich yourself. You're not actually looking out for the best interest of the company that therefore benefits or denigrates our ownership ability or ability to make profits. So you don't want to come into that argument. And a lawyer does have to be careful. The Florida bar has rules that says if you're going to get involved in business with your clients and take ownership for sweat equity, you really have to do an analysis. You have to get conflict of interest waivers signed. You have to inform them of all the things that could happen and make sure they know about it ahead of time. I had to do all those things. And so sometimes you can say it's going to be okay at the start. As you start going, you realize, oh yeah, this is probably pretty much, and that's why I had to exit. I'm like, look, it's getting to the point where, you know, this is where we've reached, where if I kept doing this, you have a really good claim maybe against me to say that you don't think I'm handling my duty to you as your counsel. I'm more worried about my own side of the pie instead of looking out for the best interest of the company, which therefore implicates your ownership interest, which you could claim are suffering because of the decisions I'm making. Even though I can argue, I know it's the best claim, best decisions for the company, your other members or shareholders could say, no, we disagree. We know why you're doing it. And then do you want to face that music? Probably not. And it could hurt your career. You could lose your license, your reputation. So it's not usually worth taking that. So I really avoid and try to stay away from that. I'd rather be paid for my services anyway.
So once you exit though, do they retain your services as an attorney?
Yeah, you can. Correct.
No. I'm asking you personally.
Oh,
is that what they've done? They said, you know what, Steve? Yeah, we pay you out. Here you go. But we still want you as our attorney.
Yeah, that's fine because you've desensitized the conflict now.
Now there's no conflict of interest.
Correct.
So there's a little bit of tension there when it comes to that, because
I didn't even think about that.
You are rendering your services, your time
Correct.
to at the end of the day, that's where the conflict really gets heated. It's like, I also want to get paid. I got a family, I got kids, I got bills.
Correct.
And you're giving me equity to a business that obviously you've gotten yourself to a point where now you need my services. So are you running the business efficiently?
Correct.
I'm just curious, what's the percentage that they have offered you? I mean, you haven't named any companies.
Sounds like Sean's interested.
I know. So I'm not uninterested. No, what I would tell you is it's never the same. The best I've gotten, 30%, a third.
Damn,
almost a third. It was under 30.
Was it a new company or was it an older company or what was it?
No, it was a startup.
A startup?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Where I was doing a lot. I was serving I was wearing multiple hats. I was doing a lot of work, and it was worth it. And it ended up being, worth it.
What'd you exit at?
I'm not talking about it. I'm under an NDA anyway. And attorney-client privilege. But what I would tell you, I mean, and people do more than you think. Listen, there's a franchise lawyer in Tampa. I won't say his name.
Steve Fantetti.
Yeah.
What did he exit at? Fantetti. What did he exit
I don't know. I would need more facts and details. I don't know that guy. But yeah, like I said, there's a franchise lawyer I know who, instead of being paid on all the work to start these franchises, he takes a percentage of every franchise. And he's getting revenue from every one of these franchises.
It's not a bad deal.
It's not a bad deal.
You're making money.
It may be what I do. No, I'm joking. No, but it's actually not a bad deal. But you do have to be careful because that conflict can obviously come up. But But to get to the second part of your question is people or companies, if they're starting off and they can't afford to pay a lot of their employees, sometimes they'll just give them stock. Yeah. So corporations do this all. I just did this last week for a client, a big one. It's about a $70 million company in Tampa. And they needed to do that, and they had to issue share. I had to draft the shareholder agreement and all the grant agreements and things like that, and the option contracts. And so we got those out, and they're being compensated on top of a lower salary than they probably are justified. But if this company sells, which it's growing tremendously, they're gonna cash out, and it's important. But there's also companies that start off that aren't even there yet, and essentially what happens is they say, look, we can't pay you at all, or someone who comes in and says, I can't give money to help you start the business, just give me an ownership percentage and I'll work for that.
I got you. Awesome, yeah. Steve. And when we get back, I just want to ask Steve, how real are those shows? Like Suits, we just saw it got to Netflix. I want to know how real it is. We're back to Happy Hour Holidaze with the Rainmaker, Steve Fantetti. He's doing business as we speak here. The guy is a rainmaker. Guy's got a lot of businesses going on. But in it all, yeah, how real are these freaking law shows? Like, you know, I love Suits. I saw that one from front to back.
Love that show.
And that was a great show. Probably one of the best ones I've seen. I've never really been into crime and, you know, like all the other ones. Yeah. But Steve, how real are these timelines and what's going on the show? Let's just go with Suits, man.
Fantastic question, because Suits is the most unrealistic legal show you will ever watch. Because they have so many ethical violations every episode that those guys wouldn't even be allowed to be there. So that's the number one thing. Like the way they disclose information about clients, the way they represent multiple clients.
Blackmail, right?
The corners they cut, the blackmail. I mean, all these things, they would never be able to do it. So that's one of the most unrealistic parts. I would say, the second most unrealistic thing about legal shows, especially Suits, is the timelines. Like, you'll see before they cut to commercial, the case just started. You come back, they're already in court arguing a motion to dismiss, which would take months to get that hearing after a lawsuit's filed. Yeah, and that's why, like, my wife, who's also a lawyer, we love watching legal shows. She can't stand, and I don't care. I enjoy it because I like the drama of it. Yeah. But she takes it so serious. She's like, "There's no way they'd be in court for a summary judgment hearing right now." I'm like, calm down. It's a show. She's like, "I can't watch this anymore." And she literally walks out of the room. Like, and I know lawyers like that who won't watch the shows because they know and they care so much how unrealistic the shows are that it bothers them. Me, I don't care. I love Suits. One of my favorite shows of all time. I loved it.
Dude, how badass.
But it is unrealistic.
Spector, though.
He's the best. I mean, he's the best.
He was awesome. And then, honestly, I mean, Mike Ross, for not being an actual lawyer, the guy was a fucking rock star.
His brain, bro. But, yeah. I mean, it's just the type of lawyer you want to be. I mean, I think Harvey practices law based on imposing his will on people and using tactics to try to scare them.
Blackmail.
Yeah, and obviously trying to just say, look, because I've developed a certain reputation, you think I'll do this every time. But I mean, you'll see in the show, there's times where Harvey's bluffing. He's got nothing and he hopes it works out for him. And that's a tough thing to do as a lawyer. I mean, I don't recommend practicing law that way because, I mean, your bluff can get called any day and then you did a disservice to your client where you're supposed to represent their interests and do what you can to put them in a good space. If you bluff and you lose, your client loses. So you got to be careful.
How important do you actually think it is with the law school? You know how they were all with the Harvard shit, you know, oh, we only hire Harvard. I mean,
great question.
Do you feel like the law schools matter that much to what kind of lawyer you're going to be at the end of the day?
I don't. I've been practicing law for over 10 years now. And I can tell you for a fact that I don't think it matters because law schools, in general, they're going to be two types of law schools. They're practical, where they'll actually teach you some skills that you need to know. Or there's law schools that are theoretical. They just teach you the theory of the law, and they'll teach you to think about the law differently and look at different angles in the law as well, versus actually how to do it. A lot of the theoretical people who graduate law school generally tend to become professors, although I shouldn't say that. I went to a practical law school and I am a professor on the side.
Yeah, but besides that,
But I mean, that's a fantastic question because my opinion, which other people will not share my opinion, but I would say it doesn't matter where you go to law school. I don't think it matters. All you learn in law school is to know how to speak the language and what you're reading to be in the room with other lawyers. After that, actually practicing and doing stuff is where you learn to be a lawyer. You don't learn to be a lawyer in law school. So I don't think it really matters at the end of the day. It's the experience and the exposure you get when you get out. That's going to make the difference. So I think where you go when you get out, the problem is the schools dictate where you get to go when you get out. It doesn't mean you're the best lawyer or you've learned more things than somebody else or you're a better arguer than somebody else. It's just certain schools, because of the notoriety they've gotten and who've gone there, get you opportunities. So it really is the opportunities you get when you get out that matter and what you make the most of.
So they say the Barbary legal handbook is
I used it. I used to work for Barbary. When I was in law school, I was paid like an hourly rate to try to sell their bar packages to other students.
So is that the textbook you have to read in order to pass the bar?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Really?
It's one of the big companies out there that you should use. I'm not plugging them because I'm getting paid from them anymore. I have no affiliation with them whatsoever. All I know is I use them. They were very good. One of the bar prep companies I use, which I don't mind plugging, Celebration Bar Reviews. They're not paying me to make that. No free shout outs, actually. No free shout outs. But I'm shouting them out because they did a fantastic job. They can do every single state, and they teach you more practically how to pass. I think they're multi-state questions because the bar has a written part and a multiple choice component. And their component of the multiple choice was really accurate to what you're seeing. So I think you really got to shop them around, but Celebration Bar Review was great. But Barbary Handbook, in terms of answering essay questions, was as close as you want to get.
So essentially, the law is black and white, right? It's written down, everything. Why is this so open to interpretation? Is it because the vocabulary can be skewed, or the definition of a word can be used in a different manner? I mean, even though they say it's black and white, it's really not, right?
It's gray.
It's all gray.
It's correct. You're 100% right. And I'll tell you what, the biggest clarification to answer your question, I think you're going to see this really clearly when I say it, is the biggest reason why there's ambiguity in the law is that a lot of the laws are older. So they wrote them at a different time. They wrote differently at those times. There was different circumstances that were going on in terms of where they were living that they had to worry about to legislate for. They thought differently, and they might have saw a future where, because I tell my client or my students and my clients, I draft for the future. I don't draft something for today. I draft so it can last in case it goes under scrutiny 10, 20, 30 years from now, because you should be drafting for the future. But they might have saw a future that they didn't think was possible back then. Like no one thought about data protection. Right, 60 years ago,
no way.
Or
Nobody
cell
thought
phones,
about computers,
privacy infringing. Correct. So my point is, you're going to have ambiguities, which people think the Second Amendment is one of those ambiguities because they didn't think there was AR-15s right in the 1800s.
AR-16s.
And so there you go. So they didn't think that the Second Amendment. People say, I'm not saying I'm taking no position on this whatsoever, but people are saying that the Second Amendment was drafted to mean it could mean any weapon in the world you want to possess, you can, because they have the right to bear arms. But necessarily,
doesn't the government have any, they can bear whatever arms they want?
Well, I'm not sure what your question is.
Okay,
the government's doing it for defense. It's a different purpose. We're civilians.
But the Second Amendment was drafted for one reason and one reason only.
To defend yourself against the government.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what people say.
So the government can drop a nuke on you. Okay, that's fine. Hey, the government has more than all and the taxpayers are paying for it, right? You're paying for it. Are you an American citizen?
I am an American citizen.
And also
since
Canadian?
2019, I have dual citizenship. Yes, sir.
So
American.
Sign me up. So then that's what the Second Amendment was. The Second Amendment was to have defense against tyranny. If tyranny does
exactly when we fought the British.
I wasn't there. Well, yeah, sure, fought the British. But
that's where it came from. Because the war for independence, which means they had to be able to rise up against tyranny. You're 100% said is exactly right. That's what they were doing. They were going against tyranny.
So an AR-15
they didn't want to be controlled by a monarch here. No, but the thing is, and I don't know if this is, I would say it's a flaw in your argument. No,
I don't think so.
I think it is. Everything you're saying is about fighting against the government.
Yes.
The contrary arguments today with the Second Amendment are people against people, non-government actors. Should you be able to still use your weapons? Get it? You're talking about only one scenario, not all the other reasons you could use a weapon in. That's why people think it's
define
different.
a weapon.
The Second Amendment is fine, doesn't it?
It could be a knife.
It's supposed to be a pitchfork back in the day, right?
Yeah.
Or a single ballistic, shotgun. All they had was a little ball bearing. You put one in, then you got to reload it with all this. You got to put the pipe in the thing and clean it out and reload it to gunpowder. We don't fight like that no more.
Or a mob that believes in witches attacks a house, pulls a lady out, and burns her at the stake, man. So
what's your question?
That's not a question. That's a statement.
But Florida has a stand your ground law where you can allegedly use force and weaponry to defend your castle. If you want, we call it like the castle doctrine we learned in law school, where defend where you live if you need to, if it's necessary. We've seen that in Florida. People have tried to use that. I don't know if it's interpreted right or if they're using it the right way, but that's what it's there for, is to help you defend your person and property if you feel someone's invading. Not every state has that law. But like I said, I just wanted to make sure what I was trying to say to your difference is people argue the Second Amendment means it's supposed to protect your right to bear arms in defense of yourself if the government is infringing on your civil rights.
Correct.
But the problem is people are utilizing the reading of that statute. I don't say it's a problem. I say it's an argument people are saying. I'm not making a personal position myself.
They're shooting themselves is what you're saying.
Is that they're using those weapons against other people for non-government defense purposes. And should they have the right to do that, but they're extrapolating the language, which is what you're saying, is how far does this language stretch? That's why we have a Supreme Court. Is we need someone, good legal minds, to interpret this Constitution that was written a long time ago, over 200-something years ago, and do we think it still upholds today those meanings, those writings, to say that this is what it's supposed to mean, guys, even though we weren't there, right? These men and women on the Supreme Court say, but we're pretty sure, based on all this past case law, that the predecessors on the Supreme Court who came before us say, we think this is what these laws mean.
So you're saying
and we're going to make decisions based on those.
Do you think
they are outdated?
So I was going to come to my next question.
Yeah.
Do you think they need to be revised?
Well, that's a great question. Here's how I would answer your question, because as a lawyer asking this, I think lawyers are going to be a little bit biased, like my answer is going to be, which is the one thing you want in the law, I think, every time.
It's clear.
Well, that'd be great. That'd be great. That'd be great. I don't think you're going to always get that. No. What I would like, though, is consistency. Because what you don't want is a judge or whoever your decision-making authority is to make ad hoc decisions. If there's no consistency in the law, then you don't really have a true democracy.
How do you have consistency in the law?
There is consistency in the law. You want to know what it's called?
Yeah.
Well, technically, it's a 3-tiered system. But when you
now it's a 2-tier.
Why is that?
Because some people get
you have 3 branches of government.
No, they have preferential treatment if you have a lot of money.
Yeah.
If you don't have a lot of money, you don't have preferential.
That's like O.J. Simpson's found guilty if he's on an NFL football player.
Hey, if the glove does not fit, you must acquit.
Different times, although don't get me started. I could do a whole podcast on that case.
On OJ?
But next time we come, happy to do it.
I mean, that one was pretty.
Listen, OJ, Kennedy assassination, we'll be here all day.
Well, Kennedy assassination, who killed Kennedy?
Well, clearly there was 3 shooters.
What?
Really? I'm writing a book on this right now.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Bro, tell us.
Well, obviously I have no proof, but it's a fictional book based on non-fictional, which means true events.
Yes.
But listen, man, there's more than one shooter. There's more than one shooter.
You think so?
100%.
Shooting at Kennedy?
Shooter at the knoll, 100%. The way the head moved back to the left, that does not come from behind. They can make that up all they want. 2, there's no magic bullet theory. If the magic bullet theory was true, which our inspector made up.
I don't know what magic bullet theory
is. They're saying that because there's only 3 shots, right? That means we know one missed. And if you guys don't know this.
I don't.
I can go deep on this issue.
Do it.
If you look at the triple underpass by Commerce, which is one of the underpasses, Commerce Street, there was a ricochet where one of the bullets hit the curb. And the ricochet hit a gentleman in the face and hit his cheek, and he had to go to the hospital. They said, how'd that happen? I was standing on Commerce Street when Kennedy was coming by, and a bullet, and I got cut. What else would it have been? And and they actually have the pictures of the actual curb with the bullet nicked it and hit it. Okay. So that means only 2 shots could have killed Kennedy necessarily. Okay. Well, we know Governor Connolly was shot. We know he was shot in the back. We know there was a shot that hit his rib, a shot that hit his radius bone in his wrist, and then it went through his thigh. Well, if bullets hit Connolly, well, we know bullets hit Kennedy because Kennedy got shot. We know Kennedy was shot in the back, allegedly, what some autopsy photos show. They don't say it. We know he was shot in the throat and it came out. But they don't prove that because what happened was they had to put a mechanism in his throat so he could try to breathe. So they had to make that hole bigger. They couldn't tell on the autopsy if it was to make him breathe or if it was a bullet hole. Clearly conspiracy trying to cover that up, I believe.
Well, the media...
And he was shot in the head.
I mean, the media is...
So how many bullets are shot? This sounds like a lot of bullets right now.
Yeah. Sounds like about
the magic bullet theory. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. But the magic bullet theory says one of the bullets that hit Kennedy came out, made its way around Kennedy's parts of his body, and then entered Connolly. And that one bullet, what? Hit his rib, hit his radius, hit his thigh. And if you look at the bullet they put in the Warren Commission report, it's in pristine condition. Bullets don't hit bones and are in pristine condition after.
I feel like this is a Seinfeld episode when...
Hawking the loogie. That's what he did. Like,
there is no way he was standing behind the bushes.
That is one magic loogie.
It comes to another thing, Steve. I mean, just talking about whatever, man. But I mean,
that's interesting.
I love getting off topic.
Dude,
I love conspiracies.
I mean, it comes to the media, man. How much? I mean, we go to this. We never know what the media is actually telling us.
That's like the submarine thing that went down.
Exactly. They already knew on Sunday,
72 hours before they even talking about.
They're getting
maybe they'll have enough air and they'll come back. It's like, bro,
No.
The Navy knew it blew up. They heard it.
Yeah.
The sonar heard it. They're gone. You can't drop to that depth
Yeah.
and still be around.
No.
Well, the thing is the Navy heard it. They told the family members,
right.
but what they were trying to do is they were trying to navigate the audience away from what was actually going on in the United States.
Like Prigozhin in Russia and what was happening with Hunter Biden, they're saying, I don't know if that's true, but the argument sounds pretty clear.
I mean,
right?
that's what mainstream media likes to do. Mainstream media likes to protect their narrative. They like to protect the people that they want to protect, right?
Or their corporate interest.
Or their corporort interests
Possibly.
that you probably wrote a lot of contracts for.
I have. Right.
for CNN,
Not CNN. Other
Fox
ones, maybe.
News, Bay News 9. Which one is it?
I can't talk about it. I'm not attorney-client privilege. Just like I'll talk about for Brave Frameworks business.
Exactly.
Who?
I don't know who that is. But yeah, man, I mean, it's just, I think that.
What do you think happened 9/11?
What do I think happened?
Have you seen the videos where it's not like
It looks like the buildings are imploding.
Yeah, like a demolition almost.
Yeah,
Because jet fuel does not burn that hot to melt that kind of steel.
I'm not advanced educational wise to know if that's true. You're probably right.
That's 100% true.
But I'm gonna obviously stand by what the narrative is that we're told. I mean, I don't know if those videos are accurate. I haven't proven the authenticity. I've seen them. It looks like it's like detonations in a way, but I don't know for sure. So until I have better information, I work on the evidence that's in front of me. I have to obviously take the position that's there.
God, this guy's such a lawyer, man.
Just say it.
This guy's such a lawyer.
I get controversial if you want, but I be making it up.
I say, make it up. Fuck it. What's that in Blaze of Glory? It's provocative. It's what the people want.
Moving.
It keeps the people going.
I love that, yo. I think, but I think Kennedy, man, I'm telling you, I have no problem standing by that. Definitely conspiracy. I'm writing a book where I think there was another shooter that actually got tape.
Was it Lee Harvey Oswald?
Lee Harvey Oswald is the claim to be the shooter. Took 3 shots. 2 of them they claim, which connected and obviously caused the assassination.
Don't they have the photo of him actually firing the gun?
No, there's no photos of him firing the gun.
Is there
no
a
photo,
video?
no video. Nope.
So it's all speculation at this point.
Well, yeah, people say they saw him walk in with it. People say that, well, first of all, his fingerprints were found on the gun, allegedly. There's pictures before the assassination of him holding the same Mannlicher Carcano gun that was used to kill Kennedy. And if you guys, some people don't know this, he tried to kill another general in the U.S. weeks before. I forget the general's name. Yeah. Allegedly, and he missed in his shot. And so they're claiming he had the motive, the opportunity, the reason to do it. They're claiming that he was someone who defended Cuba. There's leaflets with his name on it that he was in defense of Cuba and didn't want the U.S. invading, and he was pro-Castro. So he had pro-Castro Cuban leaflets out that he was creating a community of people to try to do that. You know, he was like the only member of his community.
If he was pro-Cuban or Cuba, why didn't he just go back to Cuba?
Well, listen, at the end of the day, if you want my opinion,
our parents left Cuba because of that shit.
He was a CIA operative. I think at the end of the day, he didn't care. He was just doing what he was told.
Killed him.
Well, he said it out loud. Remember, he was a patsy before he got killed by Jack Ruby. He literally was being walked through the police department. He goes, I'm a patsy. And he said it. And I think he was there that day. I don't even think he pulled the trigger, if you ask my opinion. I think they used this guy to be able to use him as a patsy to say, look, we're going to have this coordinated triangular firing to get rid of this guy who wants to disband the CIA, which Kennedy wanted to get rid of the CIA. And that's why they did it.
I'm really curious when we get back here on Happy Holidays.
Happy Hour Holidaze.
You can tell the transfusions are starting to get to the membrane.
What are we drinking? That sounds like I'm drinking something.
The transfusion. But
Purple drink.
I'm super curious to see what intrigues Steve to chase this conspiracy on JFK.
Love that.
So, Steve, we were talking about the JFK
Yes, we were.
But anyways, what got you intrigued to kind of follow this and really kind of, read all the books about it to get the right evidence?
Question.
I mean, what got you? Was it just like you were sitting there one day, obviously blazed out of your mind, and they were like, holy shit, I don't know, this thing don't seem right. Mama said
he was watching National Treasure, Nicolas Cage.
That's part of it.
He was like the president's book.
I do want to see the Book of Secrets. No, I think I saw JFK years ago, and I think when you see that movie, Oliver Stone's movie, when it raises a bunch of doubt, and then you go read the Warren Commission report, and you realize yeah, Warren Commission report. It's clearly fictional. They were trying to cover stuff. They didn't interview all the people they should have interviewed when you find it out. They covered up a lot. I think the autopsy reports are suspect. To say that one guy fired 3 shots, I think is just ridiculous.
What book are you talking about, or what movie? You said
the Warren Commission. Well, the movie's called JFK by Oliver Stone.
Is it a documentary or is it an actual movie?
It's an actual movie. It's done in 1990, 1991. Kevin Costner plays the role. There's a guy named Jim Garrison who was a prosecutor.
What's it called?
JFK.
Oh, shit.
And so Jim Garrison was a gentleman. He's deceased now, but in the early 1970s, he brought a case, the only case in the assassination of JFK to prove that trying to prove that there was a conspiracy. And he sued basically, or brought a criminal case against this guy named Clay Shaw, who had another name called Clay Bertrand, who was proven that he was a CIA operative. And he was allegedly involved in helping to set up certain individuals and finance individuals that were involved in the assassination. He was found innocent, and so he was cleared, but it was the first time that with the Geraldo Rivera show, which is why Geraldo got famous. He used to have a show back in the 70s where they showed the Zapruder film, the film that was showing that how Kennedy got shot in the head. That film was first shown there, and it was brought into court, and it was the first time it was ever shown to the public, and it showed that, look, this shot is suspect. It clearly couldn't have come from the back because the shot looked like it came here and hit the side of the side of Kennedy's temple and moved his body in a way that some ballistic experts will argue that it could have came from behind. Others say no, it clearly came from the side. There was experts witnesses on the grassy knoll that said the shot came over my head. Well, if they were standing on the grassy knoll, it couldn't have came from the school book depository on the 6th floor. It had to be from people standing next to the grassy knoll. I went last year to the grassy knoll and visited myself.
Yeah. In Texas.
And I stood there, in Dallas. I went to Dealey Plaza. I toured the 6th floor depository. First of all, the 6th floor depository shot was not an impossible shot. Very close. You did have a Texas live oak tree in your way, though, which was very hard to kind of get around. But I think at that time in November, it might have been able to shoot over. But the second shooter, with everybody looking at the street and no one looking behind, there was a guy named Lee Bowers who worked in the train station, because remember there was train stations right behind the knoll. Well, he was working there that day, and he saw people standing by the knoll, smoking multiple cigarettes, throwing them on the ground, unmarked cars. One guy dressed as a police officer. They kept coming back. They would leave, they'd come back. They'd leave, they'd come back. And his testimony is in the Warren Court. He talked about it. Well, he ended up dying after the Warren Commission report came out.
That's what they usually do.
He got Clinton?
Something like that. That's exactly right. Like the bodies start piling up. Well, there's a lot of other people who died because of it too.
What kind of bullet was it that they say it was?
He died in a car accident.
No. What struck JFK?
Oh. I mean, I don't know the type of the bullet it was called, but you can see the
Was it out of a rifle? Or
the rifle was called a Mannlicher Carcano, so I forget the type of the bullet that
so it wasn't out of a pistol is what?
No, it was a shotgun that had a scope. They show it to you because the gun, they literally are showing holding it up, and it's got his half palm print on it. And they say his palm print was on it, and they say he shot it. And I mean, again, it's 1963. It's a long time ago. DNA really wasn't a big thing, and I don't know if they planted that palm print or what. But I mean, like I said, maybe he did shoot a bullet that day. I think that last kill shot came from the grassy knoll.
So what's your goal with this book then? Because you said you're writing a book.
Yeah.
You have a 161 page outline.
Correct.
Which means that the book's going to be longer than 161 pages, right?
It will be, but I won't be too crazy long.
Are you going to publish it on Amazon? Are you going to publish it
everywhere
as a hard copy?
Yes.
Yeah, and then maybe go on a book tour.
I would love that if it gets to that level. I'm taking a different
Or is this
approach.
like a hobby for? Is this?
Well, it's both, but it's something I've been wanting to write for a long time when I got interested in it because I believe there's more than one shooter. And so my story is based on a fact that there was another potential recording and someone potentially saw a different angle of this thing. And they have to try to stay alive to be able to put that out to the public. Maybe it gets to a point where it could come out and someone has to make a decision whether or not it's in the public interest to publicize it.
So what happens if your theory is correct? What happens if your theory is correct? What happens then?
Well, they're going to take you out.
Then I'll be the guy who dies in a car accident. But I can tell you this, it would have came out already. Or it's hiding somewhere in some archives. We'll never see it. Which I highly
what about
doubt.
aliens?
What about them?
I don't know.
Do I believe in them?
Yeah, I do. I believe in extraterrestrial life.
There you go. I don't know if it's an alien, but I believe there's got to be someone else out there.
Because, I mean, you see all these videos of UFOs and things of that nature. The Navy Air Force pilots have already said, we see these like almost every day. Yep. And we just don't report them not report them.
They're all Elon Musk putting stuff out there.
He looks like a fucking alien. That's all his
I love that.
spaceships,
Yo,
dog.
that's great. Oh my god, he's the best. I love that guy.
But I mean, okay, all right, let's switch gears then.
Yeah.
All right, AI, ChatGPT.
Ooh, love this, dog. Big.
All right.
Trying to replace lawyers. Did you see that lawyer got in trouble the other day?
Yeah. We actually talked about this on a podcast
Love
where
it.
he
Go ahead.
goes write something about to prove this case correct, and then the AI
Citing false cases.
Yeah,
don't
exactly.
exist, and he submitted it to court. You gotta have some balls to do that.
Well, I don't think he knew it was false because he just believed whatever ChatGPT told him.
I
was
can't
true.
prove what he knew. If I had to guess, I would say if you use ChatGPT to make your argument in court, you have to assume it's BS because we're taught how to do the proper case research, how to write, how to cite precedent. If he's doing it contrary to what we're told to be doing and what you're supposed to be doing,
Lazy
then
motherfucker.
clearly he's just making stuff up. Yeah, I know lawyers should be using that. I don't think that would ever replace lawyers. I think there's too much intuition and creativity and arguments that lawyers bring to the table that a ChatGPT can't do.
What about paralegals? It could probably replace paralegals.
It depends in which way. I mean, paralegals do a lot. Paralegals talk to clients. ChatGPT probably can't do that the right way. No. They can deal with people's personal problems and give real world examples that necessarily ChatGPT can't do on the spot with people's real life situations. I think paralegals do a lot more than push paper. And so I think...
Well, don't they draft a lot of documents?
They draft documents. I don't know how many of them... each law firm is different, have a lot of legal significance. There's paralegals I know they have a ton of legal significance.
Like Meghan Markle?
Prince Harry's or
Prince Harry's
wife. Yeah.
Well, Mike Ross's TV wife.
Mike Ross's TV wife. I mean, she was a high level paralegal, right?
Yeah, she was, and then she became a senior associate.
She became a senior associate instantly. It never happens unless your dad played golf with the owner of the firm or something.
Exactly. Like going back to the significance on how many people just want their name on the office. You know, like on the wall. You know how big it was on Suits. Like that was like the biggest thing.
Louis Litt had to have his name on the wall.
Louis Litt had to have it.
Played game theory the whole time to get on there.
I know. Is that the way that it is when in a lot of offices where people want their name on the wall?
Morgan and Morgan.
I'll be honest with you, the people I know, no, because it's so hard.
It is.
Unless you start your own firm, your chances of getting a name on it are very unlikely. You've got to bring so much to the table.
Like clientele,
capital,
250.
So
the ability to bring in more business because of who you are and your connections.
Yeah.
And I know people who are like that in Tampa, and they still don't have their name on the wall. No. That's how hard it is.
But is that how it is too? Like where
you can still be a partner, you're just not named.
Where she the what was it? The owner was like,
Jessica.
Hey, Jessica was like, hey, 500,000 in order to.
Oh, that's all true.
To be a senior partner,
you got to buy in. Correct.
That's how it is.
You got to buy in. Yep.
So what's above senior partner? So we have junior associate, senior associate, junior partner, senior partner, name partner.
Correct.
That's the top right.
And some firms could create different titles, but that's a generic one. Yeah.
So I mean, the whole structure of law firms was pretty much accurately depicted on Suits, correct?
I think a realistic type of law firm was accurately depicted, not the only way. But yes, a accurately depicted one. Yeah.
So, do you see yourself in the next 10 years with Fantetti, Morgan and Morgan?
No, I do not. I don't think they want my name on there. They're doing just fine from a marketing perspective on that.
Yeah, bro, aren't they throughout the entire Southeast area?
Allegedly, they're the biggest law firm in the U.S. They say size does matter. That's what they say.
Seems like my wife told me the same thing last night, and I was like,
I feel sorry for you.
I don't think it's true.
So I need you to file divorce papers.
Oh, you want to trust? No.
Oh yeah, I need to do that first.
Do that? Oh my god! But yeah, I mean that's a famous law firm. They're big. Actually, I did 2 NIL deals with them. 2 of my 2 college players I represent. Now that you can pay them for name, image, and likeness, I do a lot of that space. Morgan paid them to put their bodies up on the billboard, their face and stuff like that, because they're big defensive linemen in the SEC I represented, and one of them's in the NFL now.
What's their name?
They paid them.
This guy's always trying to.
I'm trying to hiccup right here.
I'm not telling you guys in the Bucks I represent. I represent players on 5 different teams actually. NFL
teams?
Yep, and then a bunch of different colleges.
That was a big mark for college athletes to be able to make money. I mean, those colleges definitely fucking made too much money.
They do.
Billions.
I mean, and they did sell, even though it doesn't have how they sell the jerseys, it just says the number. Everybody's buying it because everyone knows numbers.
15 is T-ball, 40
dude, you like fucking was like in my head right there because I was thinking that. I was like, T-ball, I don't know, when I was going to college, going to the college much parties.
Yes. Class.
No.
Where'd you go, by the way?
I went to University, South Harmon's University.
Hard Knocks University?
No, South Harmon.
Nice. Where's that?
That's a made-up university. It's a Harvard University.
Oh, we're not talking about it.
No, we
went to Harvard.
We went to
with Mike Ross.
No, it was that movie called Accepted. I just saw it, and he's like, I didn't get accepted anywhere. He's like, where are you going? South Harmon Institute of Technology. It's a sister skill.
Affiliate.
No, but I went to Hillsborough Community College,
Nice.
and then I went to Harvard.
Nice. I can tell.
I'm very well spoken.
Very well.
They taught me how to speak English, and then they taught me how to be part of the rat race.
And then you played golf there.
Yeah,
On the golf team.
and then I was on the golf
Oh
team.
man, that would have been so fun.
And then I talked to Mark Zuckerberg, and he was like, "You want Facebook?" I was like, "Fuck."
You said no.
I was like, "MySpace, bitch." And then I ended up with Tom, and he sold out. So I made like
Tom
10K.
Tom ruined everybody's life there. What was your MySpace song?
The
On your
MySpace
page?
song.
No.
It
What was your
like,
song on your page?
Here you coming by I think it was damn. What the fuck?
Mine was Nelly Gross.
Mine was, I had Mob Deep. I had a song by Mob Deep. I can't remember what it was called, but I had Mob Deep on there.
When they
You had a Sono at that time. It was like 2004.
Dude, I actually like that to have the song when you entered the profile.
Yeah, it's
actually
cool.
tight,
That's what I'm saying. I don't know why no one else
I know.
duplicated that.
I don't understand because at Facebook it was like a page, but like they said in the movie, it was all about relationship status. Who's everybody fucking?
I mean, that's what they wanted to know.
I mean,
Yeah, they
that was the
cared.
biggest thing. Like
It
girls when we were in high school. And
Are you in a
college,
relationship? Yes, no. Are you having sex? Yes, no. That's literally the quote in the movie.
That was it. Because I mean, the girls would be like, "Man, is she gonna change your relationship status to say we're in a relationship?" So then it would be like
Well, that was
in a
high
relationship.
school.
Then you requested it, and then the bitch would be like,
I like the it's complicated option. I was left mine on that every time. I was
well,
like,
now that happens a lot now with the transvestites
Transvestites.
or the transgenders. Now, I mean, that happens quite a bit.
The best one. The best one
Now
is
it's not only complicated; it's all fucked up. I mean, actually, going back to that, Steve, what do you think about?
So how is your transvestite?
What do you think about? What do you think about a lot of the issues with like
think we're getting
Target, Bud
fucked up.
Light, and all that kind of stuff?
No, I know about. I mean, look.
Do
Here's
you
what I'll
think?
tell
Do you think they should leave it like when you think about business, politics and personal opinion should be left out, right? It's business. It's not about what you support. I mean,
Here's what I'll tell you. I think.
I agree with that.
I think. Without trying to be too politically correct, because I'm really not. I'm giving my personal opinion. I think the media blew it out of control. I think they tried to make it political. I think you have high-end brands that are just literally trying to market to a different market segmentation they've probably never marketed to before and say, hey, it's okay for you to buy our products. We want you to know. And I think it was as simple as that. And I think that ideal of Budweiser just trying to say, look, we don't care who drinks our stuff. We're open to everybody. I think people skewed that, and Kid Rock shooting all his Bud Lights and everything else that has happened.
I thought that was pretty funny.
Just think it was funny, but I just think that got overblown. I think at the end of the day that their brands we're talking about, their job is to sell as much as they can to anybody that they can. That's all they care about. I don't think they really cared about the politics behind it. I think it became a political issue because of that. And I think that's what really got overworked. I think at the end of the day, if it was me and I'm a lawyer representing these companies, I would just say, look, we're trying to make profits. They're capitalist entities.
Anyways, tell us your last fucking moments.
I got nothing else to say. I just appreciate you guys having me on.
Tell us what you want to tell the audience. You know, the shop at Target or Bud Light.
20 seconds.
I'm going to tell the audience, make sure you listen to this podcast. Happy Hour is legit.
He's actually the only one who said that.
That's right. I think you guys should check in every time you're going to get content like this. And I appreciate you guys having me on. I would love to come back again.
Fantetti!
FantettiLegal.com, small business law firm.
Hey, like, subscribe, and if you have any questions, we can get you connected with Fantetti right away.
Yeah, man.
All right, man. Cheers.